This section of the DVD deals with underwater photography with cameras, for which we recommend using the Auto Magic filter. You will join us on 3 dives here in the Red Sea, first on a shallow reef, then moving on to one of the famous wrecks here in the northern Red Sea, and finally going to the dramatic walls and schooling fish found at Ras Mohammed at the tip of the Sinai Peninsula. The first part of filter photography is obviously fitting the filters to the camera. And that's what I'm going to sit down and do now, is fitting the filters to this compact. What I need for this is the compact, a pair of scissors, sellotape, and the filters themselves, and of course one of these. Right, well the first part that I like to do is just get the tape cut first before cutting the filter. So, as always, just try and get it peeled back. Luckily I always find my fingernails grow a lot when I'm diving, so it makes peeling the tape nice and easily. So just trim off a small square and just cut a few thin little strips, which are ideal for just attaching the lens. I'm just going to leave those stuck to the top of the camera. So just peel those back and stick them on the camera, and they're all ready to go. Right, the next stage is cutting the filter. The filter I'm using here is the Auto Magic filter. This is the slightly stronger filter, and it's the one that I actually prefer for compact cameras. I tend to use this filter in the top 10 meters on auto white balance, and then deeper than that tend to switch over to manual white balance. I find that gives the best results. You can manually white balance it at all depths. It's often very easy in the shallows to shoot it on auto white balance. So what I'm going to do now is cut a piece to match the size of the lens. I think this corner here is going to fit over nicely. You can see that fits over, and so I'm just going to snip that off. Often with these little 50 by 50 sheets, on most of these little compacts, you can get at least 4 filters per sheet, so you can almost use them as a sort of semi-disposable filter, although they will actually last as long as you look after them. So I'm just going to trim the edge off there, and there it is, and then it's ready to go on the camera. Okay, you can see now if I just turn the camera on, it's slightly oversized, but that doesn't matter, we can trim it down later on. And now I'm just going to peel off those bits of tape that I left on top of the camera and just attach them. I'll do this side first so you can see. So, and just attach them there to the top of the filter. And grab the other one and put that on the bottom. And sorry, my fingers are probably in the way there, so you can't quite see what I'm doing. And now what I'm going to do is just go round and trim off the edges, the corners, just so it fits neatly on the camera. And this is where the curved nail scissors are very handy. They just allow you to trim these corners down very quickly. And there you go. And that's now ready to dive. And now all we have to do is to put the camera into the housing. So open up the housing. You'll see here's one I prepared earlier. And just drop the little Panasonic into the housing, and that's now sealed up and ready to go on the dive. And if you look in there, you can see the filter, and if I turn the camera on, which doesn't seem very keen for me to let me do, press that button, you can see there the filter's ready for use. For our first dive with the compact, we're heading to a shallow coral garden, which is one of the best environments for filter photography. Filters inject colour into underwater photos in a different way from using flash. With filters, colour stretches much deeper into the picture, making it an ideal technique for the wide-angle coral scenics I'm trying to take on this dive. I'm shooting with Peter's Panasonic compact camera, and I'm simply using auto exposure, sometimes adding a little underexposure if required. At the beginning of every filter dive, I glance up to the surface to check the direction that the light is striking the reef. This is crucial for successful filter shots. I need to position myself throughout the dive so the sun will be coming over my shoulder, illuminating the subject. The Auto Magic filter is designed to work with your camera's auto white balance. So at shallow depths, you just need to turn off your flash and you're ready to shoot colourful seascapes. Shots like these are auto everything simplicity. For more control, the Auto Magic is also designed to work with manual white balance. You can set the white balance with a card, but I usually find that a neutral coloured area of the reef is fine, as long as it's directly illuminated by the sun. Setting the white balance is very simple and only takes a few moments once you've practiced it a couple of times. Once the white balance is set, you simply recompose and you're ready to shoot. Here I take shots of the reef with my buddy Dennis in the background. Having a diver in reef shots like this adds an additional focal point that helps draw the viewer's eye through the image, making it much more pleasing to look at. It was actually quite surgy on this dive, even though it doesn't look it on the video as we're all moving in unison. Because of this, I'm taking my time and being careful not to crash into the corals, as I frame Dennis against different foregrounds. After a couple of shots, I review my images, carefully checking my exposures and add compensation if necessary. If you get a nice opportunity out of this, it's really worth taking a series of images, making the most of posing your buddy against different foregrounds. Unlike other types of underwater photography, a slightly downward camera angle is very beneficial when shooting with filters, as it improves the quality of the light on the subject and also makes the background water appear a richer blue. It's now time to wrap up this first dive and return to the boat and review the images. I'm going to show you the images filmed on my laptop screen shortly after I downloaded them from the camera. The colours do look a little washed out when filmed on the computer screen, so when we can, we'll cut to the actual shots. Again, these are uncropped and unadjusted straight from the camera. During the dive, I was using the Auto Magic filter both with auto white balance and manual white balance, depending on the depth I was at and the results I was getting. So I'll just flash up through a few of the pictures. Here are some of the shots. It was, as I'm sure you saw in the video, it was very surgy down there, so some of the compositions aren't as accurate as you'd normally get. I was moving around quite a lot. Just doing some nice sort of wide angle shots with Dennis. I think these with a little bit more contrast will look rather nice. Just some sort of typical coral reef scapes with a diver shot. Nice pleasing pictures. These are some of the shots taken on auto white balance. The previous ones were manual white balance. I think these look a little bit muddier. I think Peter's camera doesn't perform quite as the camera, my Fuji that I normally use compared to Peter's Panasonic. I think is a little better on auto white balance. But there's still some nice coral colours here, some nice browns and things coming through. Just flash down a bit further into the dive. You can see some nice reef scapes. I think pictures like this, perhaps if you were adjusting them on the computer, oops, sorry, wrong button, you might want to, I just probably slightly underexpose this a bit too much, just bring the exposure up a little bit, and just add a little bit of contrast, and if you want a little bit of colour, a little bit of saturation, and you know, I think that's slightly more pleasing than it was. That was sort of my slightly underexposed shot out of the camera, and just sort of tweaked up very minorly with just a few of those settings. I think has helped the picture a little bit. But you can see actually other shots where I got the exposure a little better in the camera. They're nice and sort of colourful and bright, straight from the camera. I think one of the most important factors when shooting with a filter is just to work that slightly downward camera angle. It has two advantages. First of all, it means that you get nice even illumination on the foreground. These are some of the shots from this morning. This downward camera angle here, shot with the compact, you can see because the light's coming from the top, I got nice even illumination on the corals. And the downward camera angle as well helps to richen up the blue as well. The one thing you can't adjust when shooting with filter is the exposure difference between the foreground and the background. But you can adjust that by changing the camera angle, and the more downward the camera angle, the darker and darker the blue will get. So to get this nice sort of a slightly downward camera angle, as you saw me using in the water, gives me this nice mid-blue background and good illumination and good detail revealed on the reef there. You can see a number of shots here, they're all the same bit of reef. This is just as the guys swam past. That's Dennis there and the reef. You can see even here when I'm not quite as close to the foreground, you're still getting quite a nice blue. But because I've just come a little bit further away, this shot where there's lots of the foreground is nice and close to the camera, there's a nice big white balance difference and it sort of pops out. Here it's starting to shoot through a bit more water. The foreground just gets a little bit more milky and you lose a bit of the impact of the image. So even with a filter, it's still important to stay close. Although you get a nice spread of colour slowly fading away from the lens, you do need to make sure that that foreground is nice and close to the lens in order to get those popping and exciting colours in the foreground, and then you can use your diver or something, or a boat or whatever's in the background to give a bit of detail, a bit of interest to draw the eye through the frame. And that's pretty much it. This is our next dive site, the spectacular wreck of the Janice D at Abu Nuhas. Wreck photography is one of the best uses for filters, because strobes just cannot illuminate subjects of this scale. Once again, I start my dive by checking the direction of the light. I will pay careful attention to this throughout the dive whenever I select a new subject to photograph. As this is a deeper dive to more than 20 meters, I have to set the camera's white balance manually. I swim towards the wreck, filling the frame with the sunlit section of the structure. Shady spots won't produce accurate values. Using this target, I set and confirm this value in the camera settings. It's surgy this afternoon on the wreck, and it's hard to take photos close to the structure. So I grab on and shoot with my free hand. Peter's camera is fitted with an Inon 105 lens, which is not as wide as their 165 lens that I prefer for wreck photography. This winch though looks just about right. Because I have changed depth, I need to reset my white balance. So I've used the sunlit section of the deck slightly deeper than the winch as a target. With the new value saved, I back away and shoot the winch. I'm pleased with this shot, so I'll take a few more to be sure I get something really nice. It shows the importance of finding subjects that suit the lens that you're using. Next, I decide to break the golden rule of filter photography and to shoot into the light instead of with it. But I'm doing this on purpose. Here I don't want colourful images, but monochromatic eye-catching silhouettes. I use lots of underexposure to keep the frames around the windows black. I think that these images would really benefit from a model in one of the windows. I spot a parrotfish, but wish Dennis was with us on this dive. As I've mentioned, this lens is not that wide, so I look for a different way to photograph the wreck. Here I use a small coral as a foreground and the ship's funnel as a background. There is a handy railing that I can grab onto in the surge. Wrecks are full of angles and features and offer endless opportunities for photographs. Too soon though, our time is up and it's time to return to the liveaboard to review the images. Here are some of the shots you saw us taking yesterday of the winch on the Janus D wreck. These were taken with the Panasonic Compact, which I've now learnt to white balance, and the Auto Magic filter and an Inon 105 wide angle lens. Actually, for this sort of wreck, a slightly wider lens like the 165 is actually nicer, but with the 105 you can still do nice detail shots like this. For this particular shot you saw I swam a bit deeper and set the white balance just a little bit deeper on this metal here, and then swam back up and recomposed the shot to take this, and you can see, just adjusting the exposure slightly and just some of the angles that I worked, you can see lots of nice colour, particularly on this Pasillipora coral here. Nice pinks coming through, the rust is showing up very nicely, and there's a very nice subtlety of colour there, and also with the filter I've maintained a nice strong attractive blue background, producing a nice image. And these are the shots straight out of the camera, just downloaded into the laptop. Here are some more shots taken on the dive. Again with the 105 wide angle, you can't do the big wide wreck shots, but you can still take some very nice interesting detail shots. I've used here some nice colourful, these branching Pasillipora corals in the foreground, they're often quite pinky and they add a nice bit of colour in the foreground, and then the eye drawing through to the middle section of the wreck here with part of the bridge, the ladder, and then this A-frame up the top there. And here's just some of the series I shot. You can see I'm working this same camera angle because this was the direction that the light was coming from. So, you know, having found that very good light angle, you looked at the sun, saw the angle of the light, you can see how all the shadows are being cast away from the camera here, so you get good even illumination and nice colours revealed by the camera. And just a series of the shots I took there, as you can see I was sort of swimming in with the light and taking a number of images, playing around, trying different things. Some work better than others. And these are some pictures of Peter as well in the same sort of area. And you can see as well as the videographer, he was sort of also using the same sort of camera angles to get those good colours coming out. And just sit down a bit. I had a play with a soft coral. I probably should have reset the white balance here. I think these are a little bit juicy. But you can see how much red was brought out. And then this is another series of images that we filmed me photographing. Just here playing around with this piece of coral as foreground interest, and then using the funnel of the Janus D, you can see the D on the funnel there, just to help draw the eye through the image and create something different, create an interesting perspective. Just sort of nice simple little shots of the wreck. These shots are taken with the 105 in-on lens, and it's not as wide as the fisheyes we normally use. And therefore, in order to get the whole ship in, I was having to back away far too far, and you can see that these shots are very, very blue in comparison with the sort of the normal wreck shots that we do. You can also see here how this side of the hull is in shadow at this time of day, and why it's important, and you'll see us when we go with the digital SLRs. We've gone at the right time of day in order to get the light on this side of the wreck and hopefully get those strong shots. But again, these shots are really too far away. With the software, you can boost the contrast a bit and get quite a bit back, but probably you're not going to get much colour, and there may be shots that perhaps look best as a black and white here. Perhaps that sort of effect is the most you're going to get out of these shots. It's getting very noisy now, it's not really a great image quality, but perhaps that's the most rescuable thing. It's certainly, I think, a lot more impactful than it was before the adjustment. The main problem with these whole wreck shots is simply I was too far away. As I said, I was using Peter's 105 lens rather than the 165 lens, which was actually on Peter's video camera. For this type of shot, I really want the widest lens possible, and I'd like to show some pictures taken from the same wreck that I took on an unfilmed dive with my Fuji compact camera, auto magic filter and the in-on 165 lens. You can see immediately that I can now get the whole wreck in frame, and as I move closer, how the colours really come out. The wide lens really makes it possible to take shots with large parts of the wreck and your buddy all in the frame. These last two shots are taken down at close to 20 metres, and you can see the colours are still very impressive. If you are specifically interested in using the magic filter for wreck photography, I'd recommend getting the in-on 165 over their 105 lens. Welcome to Ras Mohammed. It's probably my favourite dive site in the world. This is action-packed, high-voltage, unpredictable diving, and a good challenge for filter photography. The dives here often have strong currents, but these attract big schools of fish. You never know what you're going to see, or more importantly, photograph next. But it's still important to remember those basic skills, like checking the direction of light, so you're ready for whatever shows up. First up, I snap a pair of crocodile fish, sheltering from the current at the base of a pinnacle. When you find cooperative subjects like these, always make the most of them. Next time you see one, it might not be quite so willing to pose. Then Peter spots a large moray eel quite deep at about 18 metres. It's a bit deep for the filter, but I go down and photograph it anyway. You'll see what I got in a minute. An attractive school of unicorn fish are next. I approach them from the side that will ensure that the light is coming over my shoulder and onto the fish. Before shooting, I reset my white balance because they're about 3 or 4 metres shallower than the moray. With nothing else handy out in the blue, I use the palm of my hand, making sure it's not in the shade. It works well, and then it's just a case of composing some shots and waiting patiently for the fish to line up in the current. Fish schools always look at their best if they're neatly arranged. It's a visual reinforcement communicating their togetherness as a school, which will really enhance your pictures. Suddenly, an impressive school of jacks engulfs us. Once again, we position ourselves to photograph these giant trevallies from the same angle, with the sunlight illuminating their features. So many big fish powering past is really a magnificent sight. Sometimes you just have to stop and marvel. Next, I run into a batfish with a large hook through its mouth, hanging out at a cleaning station. I zoom the lens in a bit and take some nice frame-filling portraits of the poor fellow as the cleaner wrasse tries, but unsurprisingly fails, to do something about the metal hook. Finally, I head round to the Yolanda wreck to take some obligatory toilet shots, with Peter filming in the background. Somebody has actually moved this toilet since we made the DSLR dive here yesterday. And then it's time to wind up and say goodbye to the wonders of Ras Mohammed for another dive. Even when diving gets as exciting as this, it's still important to remember those basic rules of reading the light, and getting the right approach to your subjects. We're now going to return to the boat and review the images on the laptop. Right, these are today's photos from the compact camera, shot again with the Panasonic and the Inon 105 lens and the Auto Magic filter. These are from the dive at Ras Mohammed, so it was, as I'm sure you saw from the video, sort of plenty of current. It was quite a hard work dive, lots of sort of swirling fish, lots of great subjects, but not the most cooperative. And quite a bit deeper than some of the dives. We went down to a maximum of about 18 meters, and a lot of the subjects were about 10 or 12. So these are some of the early shots we saw. I'm sure you saw he's photographing these pair of crocodile fish. These were down to about 12 meters. You can see they're perhaps not as colourful shots as some of the others, but there's still plenty of lots of nice detail on there. I'll zoom in. You can see the eye of the crocodile fish and its nice eyelashes there. And a few more shots again. Nice portraits, interesting images, pretty shots. Then we sort of fought our way round the reef against the current to get to where there was some sunlight so we could get some nice images. And these are the shots that Peter was swimming behind me, filming me as we sort of drifted down the reef and taking these pictures of the clouds of Anthias and the hard coral and soft coral scenery on the wall of Shark Reef. And these are some pictures when I turned around and shot Peter coming the other way. Because we had the light coming in from the side of the reef, you could just about get away with shooting in both directions here and still getting nice pictures. Again, holding a nice blue and revealing nice colours on the reef. Some of these pictures were a little bit blurred. It was quite late in the day. This one's actually out of focus, but this one's much sharper. Because it was quite late in the day, we were beginning to run a bit low on light. So there's a little bit of movement blur on some of them. But considering what the conditions were like when we were down there, these pictures really are quite amazing. I mean, it was nothing like this down there. It was murky and green, and the filters really sort of brought up a nice rich blue and revealed all the colours on the reef. So that was drifting around Shark Reef. This was a moray that Peter found down at about 17 or 18 metres. This is our max depth on the dive. And I remember signalling to him when he showed it to me that it was in the shade and it was far too deep. So we were never going to get good colours on it, but we went down anyway and took some shots. And I think this shows you that what happens when perhaps you go a bit deep for the filter. Now, it's still a nice picture, it just becomes blue. So although I had the filter on the camera, it doesn't necessarily stop you taking a picture. It just means you're not going to get a colourful one. But let's have a quick play with this one in the conversions and see what comes out of it. Just see if while warming it up anything happens, anything useful. Not really, it's just going a bit sort of grey blue there. I don't really like that too much. Maybe we'll try it as a black and white. It certainly looks nice as a black and white. So it's certainly not a lost image at all. Just trying it again with a little bit of colour, maybe if we just tweak around some of the settings. But you know, for me, there's still something in that shot. Certainly well worth taking it. So head back and have a look at some of the other shots. The rest of these shots, by the way, are straight from the camera. These are the blue line emperors. Again, this is a typical image. They were zipping past me, as you can see in the video, and there's definitely some subject blur movement blur on this shot. Some more. Well, you see great colour on the Anthias. This particular shot I white balanced on my hand, and you can see that the colours are great, even though I was using my hand as a white balance target. I think the filtering effect of seawater is so strong that you can often get away with using all sorts of things to white balance on. People make a lot of fuss about, oh, it must be a white slate or a grey slate, but you can be quite surprised what good colours you'll get. I mean, that was white balanced on my hand, not the best thing, but the only thing I had available, and plenty of good colours in the picture. Just some more shots of those reef heads. This is some of the other photographers on our groups shooting this large Napoleon wrasse. I shot some video of him last year with the Auto Magic filter. In fact, I can show you that. Maybe we can cut to this on the video so it comes up live. And I'll just open it up. And this is the same Napoleon wrasse shot last year. He was quite a bit smaller then. Shows how much he's grown in a year. And I'll just run this video. And this is shot with my Fuji compact at about a depth of 10 meters on auto white balance. And we'll cut this back up to full screen, so you should be seeing it full screen now. But I think great colours there, and it shows the versatility of a digital compact loaded with a filter. You can switch across to video very easily when you get a great subject, and create some nice video. But that was the Napoleon from last year, and that one was shot on auto white balance. My Fuji is a bit better than Peter's Panasonic at picking up a nice white balance using auto. This is a group of divers from another boat coming past. Some of the shots of jacks. I think the way the filter captures the way the light reflects off certain individuals in a school is very really captures the atmosphere of being down on the reef. These are some of the shots of these bluefin trevallies coming past. A picture of one of the divers on our boat, and then this was me going in to shoot some of these unicorns. Obviously this was just a test shot too. Again, these were a little bit deep for me, probably around 14 meters, but I think the filter still captures quite a lot of their colors. There's a nice green coming out, and revealing quite a few things. Probably a little bit of a tweak again in the post-processing might bring a little bit out of those. I'm not doing a very good job of tweaking these, but maybe a little bit of contrast, a little bit more colour, and they're just coming out a little bit more. But some nice images of these mating schools of unicorn fish. And then the next subject we ran into was this hurly-burly group of jacks who initially were racing past my lens, and then after a while I was able to swim alongside them and get some cleaner shots of this school of jacks as it moved up the reef. These are probably also shots that could probably just do with a little bit of contrast just to help them out a bit. Just to bring them up. You can see them there. And they were a fantastic school and a great encounter. And then the next subject we ran into, which you saw me on the video filming, was this batfish. This was up a little bit shallow, about 11 meters, and you can see how just coming up just a couple of meters shallower has really brought the colours out. And this one had this hook right through his face, poor chap. But was up at the cleaning station, and actually I think we went back and photographed him again later on. This was actually when Peter was videoing me with him. And that was Peter just setting up the video, and then these are some of the shots I took again the second time. And you can see obviously with the hook through his mouth he was obviously a bit distressed, and trying to get the cleaner wrasse to do its business on the hook. Obviously I think that hook's a bit out of the league of the cleaner wrasse there. And then finally we went across to the wreck of the Yolanda. Peter actually has a great photo of this wreck when it was actually still on the reef, taken many years ago. And we did one of the classic diver with toilet photos, and that's Peter filming me photographing the toilet there. And then we swam across to this well-known piece of, I think it's a cargo old container with all the soft corals on it, and I thought the colours of the soft corals came out fantastically well. Really rich colours coming off those soft corals.
I hope that this video will help you get the most out of filter photography. If there's one golden rule, it's always to shoot with the sun behind you, coming over your shoulder and illuminating your subject. This will help the camera to record a good white balance, capture fine detail and record great colours. Thank you for diving with us. A question that I get asked a lot is, do I really need a filter for available light photography? My answer to this is, yes you do really, if you want the best results. Not using a filter is not going to mean your pictures aren't going to come out. It's just you're doing all the hard work of white balancing without really getting the best results, and it's silly to be doing all the work and not really making the most of it. But before I talk about that, I'm going to start by talking of some of the examples of available light photos that I take where I don't use the filter. This first one of a manatee is taken in very, very shallow water, and when subjects are within a foot or two of the surface, within the top metre, you don't really need a filter at these sort of depths. You're not going to see any major difference in image quality in such shallow water, and you can get great colours right up by the surface, as you can see in this shot. The other type of image that I don't use a filter is for split level pictures, because of course I don't want any colour cast from the filter on the above water section of the image. And actually in these sort of shots it's actually often quite nice to have a little bit of a colour cast from the underwater section, because of course these sort of images are all about the difference and the communication between a subject that transverses the boundary between air and water. So for me, this sort of shot, I never use a filter. And then the third sort of available light shot where I never use a filter is actually where I want a colour cast on the image. This picture here is taken under a jetty in the Cayman Islands, and I think this is actually a picture taken on slide film. And I think that actually it's very much the colour cast of an image like this that a filter would take away that actually generates the atmosphere and makes this picture a particularly strong one. So, you know, I always like to show this picture when I talk about filters to say it's not always about correcting the colours. Sometimes for silhouettes and these sort of images, actually the colour cast very much makes the image. But really, if you want the colours to be revealed in an available light shot, you want the water behind to be a rich blue colour, it's important to use a filter to get the very most out of the technique. This first picture I took with a compact camera without a filter, using just the manual white balance at Tiger Beach, which is about 3.5 metres, 15 feet deep. And at this sort of depth, this picture is fine. I think if you see this picture taken with a compact, I think most people who took this picture will be very happy with it. But if I bring up now the picture taken with the filter, you can see immediately that it's a much nicer result. There's slightly richer colours on the shark, slightly richer colours, more subtle colours coming out on the sand. You see this subtlety of colour coming out because you're not pushing the white balance as much to restore those colours because the filter's doing much of the work. But perhaps the biggest difference is in the background, where the water, instead of being a washed out pale blue, is a rich dark blue. And this is because the filter acts to attenuate the blue wavelengths and actually darkens up the water relative to the subject, very much increasing the visual qualities of the shot. Going deeper still, the difference between an unfiltered shot and a filtered shot, both set with manual white balance, is greater still. And these examples are of the Janice D wreck that you saw us diving on during the video. Actually, all three of these pictures are taken at exactly the time of day that we did the DSLR dive. And if you look at these pictures and compare them to the main video, you'll see that the light is exactly the same in all of them as it was during our dive. And as explained in the video, this is not by accident. But anyway, to get back to the reason for using a filter, it's really about holding that blue water and revealing the colours. This first shot I actually took before I invented the magic filter back in 2005. And it was actually my disappointment with this shot that actually spurred me on to create the filter. This is a picture taken of the wreck using just manual white balance with no filter to restore the colours. And you can see that it's pulled out the colours of the wreck reasonably well. You can see the brown colour of the wreck. And there's actually a little parrotfish there, I don't know if you can see it on the video. But it's, you know, there's decent colours coming out, but as soon as you look at the water behind the wreck, it's grey, all the colour's gone, it's very washed out. And now if I bring up the filter shot, you can see straight away the difference. You can see how the filters held the blue. It's revealed subtler colours on the wreck too, and that produced a much more pleasing image. And this shot, of course, is no more difficult to take than the previous one. It's just a case of using the filter to get the best result. So to sort of summarise, the real advantage of using the filter is to restore slightly better foreground colours, but you really see the difference in holding those blue backgrounds that of course set the pictures off and make them look much more impressive to anyone looking at them.